So today I had a very interesting case. Actually, I had it yesterday, but I worked on it yesterday. I worked more on it today. Every now and then you have a case in the hospital that is very interesting. Sometimes I wondered this last year if I just give up early now because it's like, oh, can't find an answer. And I was right last time because we couldn't find an answer in the hospital. They ended up finding an answer outside the hospital. And that's what many of these cases are. It was a patient with fever of unknown origin. Not like the emergency room doctor who I met prior years ago, who called a fever of unknown origin and it happened to be bacterial meningitis. It's like, yeah, you actually have to do a workup before you call a fever of unknown origin. You can't just do some tests and say, yeah, I don't know why. Anyways, so this was a case of episodic diarrhea. An elderly lady with some comorbidities. She comes in and, well, I mean, she's used to this. She's had this every year for the past 5 years. Was it 4 years? Where she gets pretty ill. She just loses so much through diarrhea that she gets admitted to the hospital or the ICU even. And there's no known etiology. We don't know why. It just happens. And so it gets better and, rehydrate her. And depending how sick she was, she may have to have been in the ICU versus on a regular floor. And she goes home. So the doctor admitting her is a doctor who I thought was, pretty good. And, I saw his note and, he had looked through her medications. He was wondering if it's this or that. Stopped some of them, changed some of them. And then I took a step back and I realized, oh, this doctor is actually not excellent. So I don't mean he's not a good doctor. A good doctor comes in a variety of forms. But I guess what I mean is he's not a brilliant doctor. So he corrected me before. I had said something and he said, no, actually it's this. I was like, oh, okay. I was wrong. Pure and simple. Fact. And that's one thing that's always very difficult, I feel, to distinguish. People who know a lot versus people who know how to think. And the thing is, in the medical field, if you know a lot because you read a lot, you may have a lot of facts. But doesn't mean that you could actually put it into practice. Because theory is different than practice in every single field. And in the medical field, it's obviously the same. Theory is not the same as practice. You could have read about a case, a diagnosis, but doesn't mean that you could diagnose it. As someone said, and I could probably list the name, but everybody who's gone through residency knows this. But the saying is the patient doesn't read the textbook. The patient doesn't have all the classic symptoms you're supposed to have. Well, yeah, because the patient didn't read a textbook. So you may have this or that, and the patient doesn't have this but has that, and they end up having the diagnosis. And you're like, but I thought you were supposed to have. I guess not. So, in terms of stopping the patient's regular medications, the patient was really upset about one of them. I restarted and I said, it's okay with me. I thought he missed the point. I mean, the thing is, this is episodic. Obviously, something's changed. She's taken these medications for a long time. They're not relevant. I mean, yeah, could they make things worse? Sure. But I don't think they're relevant. Because we're not talking about gradually worsening. We're talking about all of a sudden she gets a lot of diarrhea and just pours out of her. Like cholera. And these medications don't cause cholera like diarrhea. And the main point of it is this is episodic. Episodic. Once a year. That's strange, right? But well, it's proven. It doesn't happen that often. We have records in our computers. And the thing is, when you talk about something episodic, you have to think of things that are changing, fluctuating constantly. She thought it was seasonal. I was like, yeah, it's always February or January. Guess that's winter. But I can't think of any relationship to the seasons. And I mean, I don't really believe in the seasonality of many things. It's like, yeah, nobody's really keeping track. Your body doesn't keep track of the years. But, I mean, yeah, it is what it is. It's not like it's the exact same day every year, but it is February, January. And then the other thing is, it happens sort of every year. And yeah, that's strange. Well, the thing I think of that fluctuates and changes is tumors that secrete hormones. And the reason I know this is because I've seen it before. So somehow you're like, why did this person get better? I didn't do anything to the tumor. It's still there. It's like, yeah, but sometimes they make more hormones and sometimes they make less. And I don't know why. It just is. When we talk about intelligence, we talk about, somebody who could diagnose something. There's two aspects to being a good doctor. There's money aspects, but in terms of my definition of a good doctor, like House MD, right? It's you need to know how to diagnose something, and then the second thing is you know how to treat. They're actually different things and different skill sets, somewhat. You got people who are excellent at both, who are good at one or other, and people who are just not good at either. But, there's plenty of people in the field, and there's plenty of bad people too. But I think some things like porphyria are just too hard. I don't know anybody who's diagnosed porphyria as in they actually thought it was porphyria. We learned there are certain things, anything. They could cause any symptom, like tuberculosis, porphyria, AIDS, anything, right? So, I know somebody who diagnosed porphyria, but it's just because he ordered every test under the sun. It's not he actually thought the patient had porphyria. So, it's lucky in a sense, but it's not like he caught it, I would say. And I don't know anybody that's actually caught porphyria. I was talking to another doctor. He knows two other doctors. He's also worked a few decades more than me and in different places, like in other countries. But yeah, he said that he's known two people who thought it was porphyria and caught it, but I haven't. But it's not common at all, and I don't think that's necessary to be a good doctor because it's just so rare. But I think that one thing is if you could diagnose PCP, which is pneumocystis carinii pneumonia, or now they changed it to pneumocystis jirovecii pneumonia, but PCP sounds cooler. But it's commonly associated with people who have AIDS, and it's an atypical pneumonia that's very hard to treat. But I think that's where intelligence comes in. And we all learn about PCP. Like, there's nobody who didn't who went through medical school and residency who does not know what PCP is. However, it's not easy to diagnose, even though it's not that uncommon. It's more uncommon nowadays, but we still see it. Because there's still people with AIDS, as in people who have poorly controlled HIV and have very low CD4 counts. Their immune system doesn't work too well. But the thing is, when you say, how do you diagnose, right? Some of it has to do with how much you know, but we could look up a lot of stuff, and a lot of it has to do with your thought process. And I feel that's sort of the thing I realized today is this other doctor, he knows a bit, but his thought process is not quite there to the level of somebody I would call intelligent. He's probably above average intelligence. Realistically, probably most doctors are, even though I'll say that most doctors are stupid. But the idea of intelligence is the idea of logic, diagnostician, right? And it goes back to my background as an engineer, where many, many people are intelligent, but the few are just brilliant. And that's the thing. The way you think, process, it's something almost you cannot teach. It's like being a great programmer. Sure, you could teach someone how to program, but they're just going to be a miserable programmer. They're not going to be making those six figures that people say everybody as a programmer makes because they're miserable. They're no good. If you're a good programmer, you could easily make hundreds of thousands of dollars, and you're worth every penny of it. But those people know how to think. And today I realized thinking versus knowledge, completely different things. And now with the internet and this vast treasure trove, well, unfortunately for the bio majors, as my chemistry teacher was saying, it's an open book test. Meaning, memorizing stuff, not so important. Knowing how to look for stuff, knowing how to look through stuff, knowing how to put all this stuff together, come to a conclusion, That's where it's at today.